Hey everybody, Omar here, your Edge of South Africa guy, bringing you the latest and the greatest in South African knives. Just another discussion video. I've been kind of carrying I've been on a Chris Reeve kick lately, just because I'm kind of depressed. My Clyde Challoner knives had sort of a slight delay. They're currently in Seattle, and my knives are on hold. They got the address wrong. I changed it, so I'm kind of a little bit, on edge because of it. So I'm kind of waiting to get those knives, and I can't wait to do that big video for that knife. But in the meantime, I've been kind of carrying my Chris Reeve in Cosi, and I've been thinking about ball bearings and, are they really necessary in in knife making? I mean, is it something that you really need on a tool? Is it necessary or is it not necessary? And I've come to the conclusion that there is a point where you buy knives and the action should be good enough. Case in point, my Chris Reeve and Cosi. This has been an evolutionized knife. I mean, it started out obviously as the Sabenza 21, and then they moved over to the Sabenza 25, and now this is the final iteration, the Nkosi. And that happened because for the first time in Chris Reeve's career, he was actually influenced by the market and what was going on in knife making, and he began to realize that there was no denying that the public wanted better action on knives. So Chris Reeve decided to try to create his own knife to compete with the ball bearing systems. And he came out with the Nkosi. And you know what? I've been carrying this thing around now for like a week straight. You're talking to somebody that usually carries a different South African custom every day. And I said, you know what? Let me just carry this for a while. And I really, really got used to it. And I began to realize, you know what? I mean, ball bearings really are not necessary. That's just something that people wanted. They just wanted that better action. But this is smooth enough on washers. I mean, and I like the way it feels, I like the way that it flips out, where there's that sort of little bit of control involved there. But in any case, let me get on with this video, because I was talking about ball bearings and how they vary. So now, if you guys are familiar with ball bearings and how that came out, it started out with the Icoma Korth ball bearing system. And I wish I had some sort of demonstration to describe, but I'm going to try and describe it to you vocally. So the Icoma Korth ball bearing system is basically, it's where they have dug a trench inside the pivot of the knife, and a perfectly circular trench inside the knife. And that trench is exactly dug in there quite deep into the knife, where you can put a bunch of ball bearings and grease and gunk in there in the knife, and that's what would create that nice smooth fall shut action. That was obviously developed in Japan by Icoma Korth. He's the gentleman that invented that system. And then they found out that there was another way you could recreate the same exact system, but make it a little bit more organized. So they basically took, what they did was they took a washer, and they created holes in the washer for the ball bearings to sit in, separated by a separation between the ball bearings. And that's what created the caged ball bearing system. So that was another evolution in the ball bearing system. So here I've got a couple of knives that I wanted to bring out. This one is made by Willem Steenkamp. Let me put this aside here for a second. So as you guys know, this knife only runs on washers. So let me bring out this one. This one's one of my favorites, and I carry this quite a bit. This is my Willem Steenkamp black marble carbon fiber folder. And this runs on ball bearings. the Icoma Fourth ball bearing system, and you can see how nice and smooth that is. It's fairly smooth, you know what I mean? You just... Okay, now the question is this really a difference in... This always got me. Is this really the smoothness of this knife? Is it really that big of a difference between... And there is a difference, obviously. But the question is it necessary between this Chris Reeve knife? Because this is almost, with the exception of it not falling shut with one swipe going down, I mean, the knife is still smooth. I mean, is it really necessary? You're getting almost the same action with less complication of the concept of it having ball bearings in it. You know, which is what the Wilhelm Steenkamp knife has in it. Because this one, if you jerk it fast enough, it'll actually fall shut. I mean, see if I could do... Nope. See, you can see it kicks back, because that's the advantage of the ball bearings, is that it'll kick back if you... But I could just sort of... hold on. There. I could close it and just do one swipe, and it closes. I can't do that with this knife. It'll sort of stop a little bit. Maybe you can oil it more. It might fall shut with a little bit more force to it. But the question is, it's not really necessary to get the knife open. You know, I mean, you are getting the knife open a little bit quicker, but the reason we like this is because we like the feel of it. I mean, a lot of us, let's be honest, a lot of us buy these knives as something fun to carry in our pocket. It's always nice to have something, you know, that's expensive. You know, you kind of want to brag. I know I do. That's how I got into this. But I'm also into it for the art. But the point is that the action is part of the art. It's not all about the aesthetics. And the action on a knife will vary from knife maker to knife maker. And that's one of the things I want to talk about in this video, is that, you know, the action sort of seems to get underplayed when you buy a knife. People tend to forget that when you say, well, how's the action? It actually depends on the knife maker who made the knife, because he's the one that's doing the tolerances on the knife. The tolerances are basically how tight you can get the knife made, you know, with no blade play, no up and down blade play, no side to side blade play, just a really good solid tool. And that varies from knife maker to knife maker, but it's never talked about. You know, we all think it's, well, is he using a ball bearing system? Is he not using a ball bearing system? Are they on ceramic ball bearings? You know, because that all depends, but it also depends on who's putting the package together. And that's never really discussed. And the answer to your question is yes, the lock bar tension does make a difference. Again, that has a lot to do with tolerances. And that's why I'm going to bring out... That's why I'm going to bring out my favorite of all the knives. And this guy is a perfect example of a tolerance nut. And that guy is Clyde Challenor. So let me bring this knife out. The reason I brought my Clyde Challenor knife out is because... And I'm going to put the Wilhelm Steenkamp knife just aside for a second. We all know that Chris Reeve doesn't do ball bearings, and he probably never will do ball bearings in his knife system. It's just not something that's going to happen. He just, you know, he believes in his own philosophy, and there's nothing we can do about it. And the reason that is the fact that Chris Reeve, his goal is not to fashion a knife around whatever a customer wants. His goal is to make the most perfect tool, an aesthetically pleasing tool, to the limit of what he believes is a good knife. That's basically what his goal is. So that's one of the main reasons why we haven't seen very many changes in Chris Reeve's knives in 20 years. Now, the reason I brought this knife out, the Challenor Raptor, two reasons. It's the only It's the only Clyde Challoner knife I have at the moment because my other two Vipers are on hold in Seattle, and I'm so pissed off, which is why I'm actually doing this video today. I don't mean to complain to my audience that's watching me, but you know, I'm hurting here, and I really need I want to see my knives, and I'm sure you guys want to see them too. So, but in any case, if you ever wanted to wonder what would a Chris Reeve knife be like if it were on ball bearings? And I don't know if Clyde Challoner likes me doing this video, but there's so many similarities between these two knives. The only main difference is that Clyde Challoner puts his on ball bearings, which is something that Chris Reeve would never ever do. And you know, the Inkosi is probably the smoothest you'll ever get out of a Chris Reeve knife. But if you ever wanted to know, well, what would his knife be like if it were on ball bearings, you go to Clyde Challoner. And the reason I say that is because take a look at both of these knives, all right? And before I get into the ball bearing system in this knife, you know, to explain that part of this video, take a look at these knives, okay? They are both, obviously, they look, the way they were built with the same philosophy, ergonomics. Chris Reeve is one of the few knife makers I know of who will create a knife ergonomically to fit your hand. Clyde Challoner's Vipers are that way, but since I don't have my Vipers with me, I brought out my Raptor. But yeah, this knife is actually molded to your hand. You know what I mean? That's one of the main reasons it's so comfortable to use. I mean, you could use this knife literally for heavy, hard use all day if you really needed to cut whatever, and your hand will never get tired of making the same motion over and over and over again, cutting with this knife whatever heavy-duty tasks you need to do, which I've actually done with this knife. The reason you can't tell and it looks fairly brand new is because I had this spot treated at least 3 times. So that's another thing. But in any case, yeah, Chris Reeve knives, you could use his knives all day, every day, for, you know, for like 4, 5, 10 hours. Holding this in your hand, using the same comfort over and over and over again, you would never need to, my hand is killing me, it hurts. The ergonomics on the knife are just that great. It's just that your hand would never get tired of using it. So anyway, put this one away. The same thing goes, yeah, I wish the messages wouldn't pop up, disappear so quickly, for the one guy that's watching my video. I agree with you there. I'm glad there's somebody joining me. Yeah, not for cutting though. Yeah, it's because his grind isn't as great. You know, he doesn't grind the knives down that much. That's one of the major complaints about him. That and his thumb studs are painful. But in any case, I have a workaround around the thumb studs. I just, like I did in my last video, I just put it underneath my fingernail. I don't have it touch my skin because that does hurt. I just do it underneath my fingernail. I could do this all day. I don't have any problems flicking it, but I can understand what people say when their knives, you know, when the flicking motion on a Chris Reeve knife hurts. But anyway, on to Clyde Challoner. Like I was saying, the ergonomics on this is very similar. I mean, it's look how contoured that is. See how he's got the grooves put in there? Yeah, that's done with CNC machining, which is something else they have in common. Chris Reeve also does CNC machining, which is the reason why Clyde Challoner got into CNC machining, because the tolerances are so tight. He's always been very impressed with Chris Reeve's tolerances on his knives. That he decided to go that direction after making liner locks for a couple of years. He decided to go ahead and pick himself up his first CNC machining, and has been CNC machining his butt off ever since, and he's had great success with it. But Clyde Challoner, in any case, very, very same thing. I mean, I could use this all day. Not that I would. This is a safe clean. But I could use this all day for heavy-duty tasks, and my hand would never get tired of holding it and cutting it. Now, back to the case in point, is it Revon? If he's still watching. Clyde Challoner's grind is a little bit better. He's much better. Now this knife runs on ball bearings. It doesn't just run on ball bearings, it runs on ceramic ball bearings. And his knives fall shut. Now, the reason I say what would Chris Reeves' knives look like if they were on ball bearings, you'd want to choose a Clyde Challoner knife. Here's the reason why I say that. Clyde Challoner took Chris Reeves' concept of CNC machining and he brought it up a step. He actually gave you the opportunity to feel what it would be like to make the same exact perfectly contoured knife in your hand, all right, that runs on ball bearings. Now, the reason why this is significant is because knives that are made by hand with ball bearings or cage ball bearing system or ceramic ball bearings or whatever you want to call it, if they're made by hand, because the knife is made by hand, the tolerances can only be so tight, okay? It's kind of important to understand this, but the ball bearing system on a knife made by hand can only be so tight because human beings are human. We can only tighten things and create things by hand with the tolerance being limited to a particular point. Not only limited to a particular point, but even if they could get it to CNC machining tolerance level, which is possible. Case in point, there's a new knife maker named Mitchell Clark. If you haven't heard of Mitchell Clark, you can check him out on Instagram. I have some really nice people back here that are enjoying the day, so I hope you guys aren't bothered by people walking back and forth. I kind of like it to have people walking back and forth. But in any case, as I was saying, I don't want to lose my train of thought, but it is possible to get CNC machining tightness made by hand with the same level of CNC machining, but the difference is with CNC machining, it's not going to last as long. What I'm trying to say is this. On a knife made by hand with ceramic ball bearings, you could get this tolerance, okay, with the ball bearings running on ceramic. But you see how this knife closes? You know what I mean? It closes where there's like a little bit of a stoppage. That's really how ceramic ball bearings are supposed to behave in a knife. That's the way it's really supposed to be. But yet, because knife makers like Andre Thorburn and Arukas Blumeris and all these other amazing South African knife artists that I've had a pleasure to speak with and talk to on Instagram, that's how they make their knives. Some of their knives, they fall shut. It's sort of a catch-22 because their knives don't have any blade play either. You know, their knives are just as rock solid as this, but they do fall shut. But eventually, and this is just my theory, okay? This is just my theory and just what I'm saying, what I believe. Because the knives were made by hand and because the knives were taken to the limit of how much you can tighten a knife and make the tolerances as tight as you can possibly make them, eventually they will lose their, their tolerance at some point. And eventually you may need to go to Arukas Blumeris and Andre Thorburn to have them serviced. And guess what? Because they are the way they are, they will have them serviced. They'll service them for you. Because a lot of these guys from South Africa, they have a lifetime guarantee for life. It's not really written in contract, but if you're one of their customers and you're unhappy with their knife, they will want you to contact them, and they will take the time to service your knife to your satisfaction. Okay? But with Clyde Challoner, while he does the same exact thing, if he doesn't have to, why bother? So he goes with CNC machining because he wants that tolerance in the knife not to change. He doesn't want it not to change. And as a result, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but as a result that Clyde Challoner decided to go this way, He has more time to converse with his customers, to talk with his customers, to make friendly chit chat with his customers, work on his orders with his customers, because he's on Instagram all the time and he's always talking with me and talking with other people. So he has the time because he's got that time, because he decided to go with the CNC machining. And look how beautiful this thing closes. I mean, this knife will never ever change the way it closes. The tolerances are that tight. Versus, say, a knife where, someone like, Willem Steenkamp, and I actually, he's probably one of the more difficult ones to get a hold of. I've never even had a knife custom ordered by him. But this guy doesn't do CNC machining. He does, made by hand techniques. But here's the thing. He actually makes his knives using tools that he made himself. So he actually makes the tools that makes the knives. How crazy is that? But his tolerances are just as tight. But yeah, eventually there's only so much a human being can do with tolerances. They'll do it the best that they can based on their skill. But eventually that will just make way to some degree. And again, this is not on ceramic ball bearings. That's why it doesn't close as well as one with ceramic ball bearings. And I've talked about ceramic ball bearings before. The fact that ceramic ball bearings have the ability to fall shut, that's more of a cause and effect rather than the reason that knife makers use it. The reason that knife makers decide to go with ceramic ball bearings is not for the benefit of the action, but for the fact that you don't have to oil your knives as much. I'm never going to say that you never have to oil your knives with a ceramic ball bearing knife, but you don't have to oil them as much because there's not as much friction taking place on ceramic ball bearings. Ceramic ball bearings are much harder. They're much more, they stay cooler, so there's no friction, there's no heat, which would produce the friction, which would produce shoddy action on a steel ball bearing knife. And that's why we need to oil our steel ball bearing knives more than we would on our ceramic ball bearing knives. So, but yeah, anyway, to conclude this video, that's the reason for, or at least the difference between sort of the ball bearing systems and how they're made and why it shifts from knife maker to knife maker, and how that's all part of the art. Because can you imagine if the only thing that was different between knife maker to knife maker were the aesthetics? That would be kind of boring. I mean, it would be kind of nice to have, and I think it's kind of nice that we live in a world where sometimes you feel a knife, or you check out a knife, or maybe you bought, say, several knives from one knife maker, and then the knife maker comes out with a brand new model you've never seen before, and then you hold it in your hand, and then you open and close it, and you say, oh, that one was made by Clyde Challoner, I know that. And then it turns out that you're right. That's one of the nice things about, buying knives and making and being familiar with the knife makers, is that everything varies from knife maker to knife maker. And it really is an art form that shifts from knife maker to knife maker. So they're not all the same. So when you think about plugging down that $700 or whatever the amount of money you plunk down to buy your custom, just think about that for a change. And think about the fact, do I really need to spend, because the difference in prices between these two knives are pretty big. I usually don't shout out price on my channel, but this one is $9.50 and this one's like, no, I'm sorry, I can't remember how much this one cost. Sorry, what am I talking about? This knife is $5.50, my mistake, with the inlays. Screwed that up, sorry. This one is $5.50 and this one is $1,200. But again, what you're getting for the price that what you're getting with each knife maker, you're getting hours of work put in by one guy that was paid attention on your knife. And he made this one for you. I mean, that's the difference versus, say, Chris Reeve, who gave you super perfect solid piece that has, limited customization on it, but it wasn't made for you, but it's still a really good solid tool. And isn't this really what's necessary for most of us to be carrying in our pockets on a day-to-day basis? So I kind of went off the bend on this video, but basically I was just talking about the different ball bearing systems and how they vary from knife maker to knife maker, and how long the tolerances will last on your knife, if they're made by hand versus if they're made by CNC machining. And I've come to the conclusion, and you really should understand that you can come to the conclusion that if you are purchasing a knife with CNC machining, you're probably going to be visiting your knife maker less and less. That's, again, and CNC machining, it's not like you could put your knife into a CNC machine and the knife comes out a knife. It depends on the skills of the knife maker and how good is he with using those machines to give you the perfect, thank you, Revon, I saw the name, thanks a lot, great to see you, which of course is my good buddy. I hate that he uses Revon. Yeah, the fact that your knife will stay the same for as long as you possibly will have it in your possession, whether you use the knife or don't use the knife. The tolerances for this are never ever going to go away. So that's just something to think about. Like I talked about a gentleman briefly, and I'm going to talk about him for a quick minute before I close out this video. And I'm responsible for these two guys meeting, and I wish I had a knife in my hand of his work, but I'm going to have one this Christmas, and Revon knows that. Mitchell Clark is a gentleman from South Africa. He's a really young guy. I believe he's like right around 31 years old. He has not been making knives for very long. I think he's been a knife maker for roughly, I'm going to say 6 years. He makes his knives by hand, and I kept mentioning him to Clyde Challenor over and over and over again, and he saw the knife, and he said, yeah, his knives look pretty good. He went on his website. This year, 2023, he went down to Blade Show for the first time after being away from Blade for a while, and he finally met with Mitchell Clark, the gentleman that I actually told him about, and he went and he saw him, and he saw that he was making his knives by hand, and he realized, Jesus Christ, this guy's making knives by hand with close to the same tolerances as CNC machining. I mean, he makes them really good. But case in point, Mitchell Clark's knives are incredibly, incredibly expensive because his labor costs are so much. What he's doing is he's trying to get the same exact tolerance levels that Clyde Challenor gets using CNC machining, but it's taken him 2 and 3, 4 times as long to create the same action, the same tolerances as Clyde Challenor. And what if and of course, if Mitchell Clark messes up, which I understand he has on occasion messed up, he has to start all over again, and that's money lost to Mitchell Clark. So now those two have now gotten together, and he is going to try to get Mitchell Clark into CNC machining a little bit. They've actually met up, and he's decided to help him. So, with at least the CNC machining part to bring the costs down to his knives, not take away anything from him, but just get him to the point where the tolerances are there. Mitchell Clark is a very, very special knife maker. He had no mentor. Well, he did have a mentor, I believe. I don't know who his mentors are. I'm guessing, and I may have gotten this wrong. I believe one of his mentors was Lawrence Prinsloo, I think, or it could be Francois Dutoit. I don't know. One of those great South African knife makers helped him. Yeah, I agree. They should do a collaboration on CNC machine knife. Maybe that might come to pass. I would like my name on that knife if that does happen, because I got them together in some sort of quiet way. I think I deserve a free knife, from both those guys. And no, I'm just kidding. But those two guys getting together, who knows what will happen in the future. Maybe they're, because their philosophies are the same in a sense that they really believe in the philosophy of tolerances, because that's Clyde Chalonor's game, is tolerances. And I think that's probably why Clyde Chalonor is so underrated as a knife maker, because he puts all of his concentration on the tolerances, and everything else comes second, because he still believes in the philosophy. He never let go of the philosophy of, I'm going to make a really great tool no matter what the public wants. I will add aesthetics, and that's how these two guys are somewhat similar. They both believe in super duper tight tolerances, but Clyde Chalonor brings that same super duper tight tolerances, and yet will still do a degree of customization for the customer. And that's why people come to him time and time again. But because, for whatever reason, and I can't figure out why, he's sort of stuck in this, he doesn't seem to get as much recognition as, some of the other knife makers, like one of my favorites, Willem Steenkamp, Kosi Steenkamp, Andre Thorburn, J.D. Van de Winter, all those knife makers that I love. I don't know why. He just doesn't get the same recognition. He's very underrated. Epic Snuggle Bunny loves him. I love him. And yet he doesn't get what he deserves in the knife world, and he really should. He is coming back, Clyde Chalonor, with a vengeance in the future. He's got a brand new knife coming out in 2024 Blade Show. It's going to be ready, called the Warthog. I am getting one. In fact, I was promised the very first one, and I am going to definitely be getting one of them. Mine's going to have a 01 underneath the bottom of the pot clip. I can't wait to get that one. But in the meantime, while I'm waiting for my Vipers that I have told Revon, my buddy Revon, that I'm not going to get, because, Omar wants something so badly. When he wants things so badly, he never gets it. And I'm still sort of stuck on that. So today's a weekend. There's no movement with DHL. I confirmed that with Clyde Chalonor. I'm still pissed off because I want my knives in my hand right now. So in the meantime, even though I went off the bend with this video, ball bearings. No ball bearings. No ball bearings, ball bearings, and ceramic ball bearings. Which do you prefer? Does it matter? Does it not matter? What's your preference? What is superior? And the answer to that question, which is pretty much the answer of this video, it doesn't make a difference. It really doesn't. All three are needed in the world of knife making. People's tastes are gonna vary. There are customers out there who just buy Chris Reeve knives, aren't particularly interested in ball bearings. There are people that do like ball bearings or wish they could be smoother. There are people that like to have their knives made by CNC machine. There's so many different varieties, so many different flavors, so many different kinds of things that you could go with when it comes to your knife purchases, and that's all part of the journey. It just depends on where you're going to go and what it is that you want out of your day-to-day carry folder. If you're not into the art, and you want a superior tool, probably Chris Reeve is where you're going to go. So, in any case, I went off the bend, but it was still kind of fun to kind of ramble on and on regarding this video. But mostly I was trying to talk about the difference between not having ball bearings, having ball bearings, and then having ball bearings with ceramic, made with ceramic. We all, and as this video concludes, we come to the conclusions that yes, ball bearings are not necessary for a folding tool. They're not. But it is nice to have, action vary, and what you want to carry in your pocket. That's always part of the fun of it. So I kind of hope maybe this video was sort of interesting to you, even though I didn't really have much to say as far as, educational purposes. But, maybe, in the future you'll take some of what I have to say to heart. And just remember, every knife that you get, from wherever you get it, it's always going to be different. Whether it's a production knife, like Chris Reeve, or a made-by-hand, completely made-by-hand knife, like by Willem Steenkamp, or a knife made by CNC machining, but all the detail work is done by hand. And you can see how perfect the centering is on this guy. Jesus Christ, it's crazy. Clyde Challenor, man. Really, really, really just beautiful. So that's it for this video. I don't have anything else to say other than hope to see you guys. I will be back. Okay, if Revon is still on, if he's not on, too bad. But I will be back hopefully next week with 2 Vipers from Clyde Challenor again. Not only just a really great knife maker, but he's also my friend. And you'll see that he's my friend when I present the knives to you next week. Jeez, I just can't wait to get these. I'm sitting here like a cat on a hot tin roof waiting for my knives to show up. I'm just dying over here. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope this was kind of fun. I know it was fun for me. And I'll see you next week with my Vipers, hopefully. Happy hunting.